What is up, peeps? We are here at the Sixth Invitational with a very special interview. Josh, I'm going to actually have you do an intro, though, if you don't mind kicking this off, with maybe telling the people back at home your name, but also a bit about what you do over at Ubisoft.
Well, my name is Joshua Mills. I'm the game director on Rainbow Six Siege, which what that means is I actually take the vision from our awesome creative director, Alex Kaprasis, and distill that into the mechanical experience that you actually end up playing. I've joined Siege just over 2 years ago, but I've been working in games for almost 15 years now.
When it comes to the competitive landscape, what has it been like working on a competitive FPS title?
It's insane. Like at the end of the day, it's insane. It's a live game where we get that instant feedback from both our fans, our pros, like everything. It's an incredible experience because it's something you don't actually get to experience in a lot of other productions. So it's new. It's very fresh to be able to do that. The other thing is we take the competitive nature of Siege very seriously, which is why anything we're introducing into the game for a lot of the content that comes in, we actually give it to our pros early so that we can get that feedback from their side of the table and make sure that we're making the right calls.
But when it comes to the shooter genre in particular, do you find that to be a harder genre to work in this industry with how I feel like the expectations with shooters and FPS titles have been set pretty high, not only with Siege, but other competitors too. Do you find it difficult to work on a shooter at times?
I'd say yes and no, because like shooters are all about that game feel, right? Like everything feeling entirely precise, whether it be just the way a weapon feels or the movement or the sense of flow you get. It is challenging, but it's really important that for us recognizing what our target is, like who are we? We're a tactical first-person shooter, and that means there are a lot of things we don't have to essentially worry about to a certain degree because we can put more weight behind our mechanics. We can make it so that one in the chamber is a feature in Siege where if you start reloading, canceling a reload will actually drop the mag and you only have one bullet left in your gun. And that was something we brought into the game because that makes sense for a tactical shooter. And removing reload canceling, for example, where it just kind of feels a little artificial was important to us. So it's challenging 100%, but it's important for us to, again, remain Siege and look at what that means to us and not necessarily mimic stuff when it doesn't make sense.
When it comes to your game experience, can you give people a bit more of your background as well? Just number of years, number of experience, maybe number of genres you've worked in. You can just, this is your kind of chance to just reel on yourself a little bit so they get to know a bit about yourself.
All right. This is going to be weird though, because it's like my background's insane. And so I started in India actually. I worked in independent games in Toronto. So I was working there and we shipped a dungeon crawler game back in the day for Xbox Live Arcade. So that was like the big thing back in the days. Dungeons and Dragons Daggerdale. You can look it up. Anyway, from there, I ended up getting an offer to move up to Montreal to work on a really cool prototype that I had been shown called Contrast. This is made by a Compulsion Games. So I came up here and we shipped Contrast. It was a launch title for the PS4 and the Xbox One. So that was super exciting. And then from there, we started going through and developing We Happy Few. At which point, after some time on that game, I ended up coming over to Ubisoft and joining the Watch Dogs 2 team. So I was on Watch Dogs 2 as a mission designer over there. And I was building a bunch of missions. The one I worked on was Home Sweet Home. If you know the game, whatever. It's cool. So I love Watch Dogs. I think it's awesome. After that point, I did a bunch of stuff I can't talk about. And then after that, I actually came over to help ship AC Valhalla. Make sure that could get across the line and do support on that for over a year. And then came over to Siege. So
has there been anything particular you have noticed about the shooter and FPS audience that has been like a challenging part to work with? Like whether it be how receptive they are or the kind of feedback they give, or when it comes to all the balances and such, which comes with a shooter title. Have you noticed a difficulty when it comes to that?
So for me, not really. Why? Because they're my people. Like I worked on all those different kind of genres, but I was always a shooter fan and I was always playing. And I went through all sorts of different stuff. So I've been on the receiving end of being on communities where like you're trying to get that feedback across, you want to be heard, and then it just feels like it's falling on deaf ears. And I hate that. It hurts so much, like that sort of thing. That's why SI is amazing because we get to talk about a whole bunch of stuff. And that's one of the big things is like I recognize where like the passion comes from because I've been there and I've been like screaming from the rooftops or on Twitter, like asking people like, why isn't this happening or whatever? So it's probably one of the most passionate player base just because we can be really competitive and we get like way into our game and everything like that. And I love it though.
I feel like one of the biggest things that a lot of these games not necessarily struggle with, but have to kind of debate with themselves on is when you have a game that has such a sheer longevity. You look at like League of Legends, you look at Smite, you look at games like Siege, and you have these continuous iterations of gods, champs, and operators, right? So a question to you would be, at what point is it too many operators, or how do you guys go through that in your head of like, okay, we need to release this then, or this is going to be too many, or what's the future goal of like, is there a goal of a certain number of operators before a game continues on? How do you guys think about that topic or approach it?
Well, for us, there's still like a huge ideal pool of stuff we want to bring to the game. So like just, we have what we call the fridge of our operators. So there is literally stacks and stacks of designs of operators that we want to go through and want to address. The goal here is to make sure that they don't encroach on the position that another operator has. The other thing that's really important to us is the legacy of the operators. So that's why we're talking about our remasters and being able to go in and make sure that they're up to snuff and they hold ground this far into the game. Because you're right, like we've got operators, the Pathfinders from year one, and how do they work with a year 9 operator and all those interactions. Additionally, the other things we look at is from a competitive stance, that's a lot of operators to have to deal with. And especially whenever you're trying to make up a certain strategy, that means there's a lot on the board. And this is why we reevaluating even like our ban system and stuff like that to be able to give players more control over that roster.
And I know we're embargoed for this for a couple of days, but Alex mentioned, I think he really well worded it to a crowd too, where he was like, this game can last forever because we have the right people and we have the right tools. And not every game can say that, right? And I know we won't name games, but a lot of games have been approaching a second title over the past just 2 or 3 years alone. So is Rainbow Six Siege 2 something that's on the back of your mind, or is it on the forefront, or are you just kind of putting it away till 10th year plus?
So I 100% agree with the way that Alex worded it, because like we have a foundation that is so solid and a team that is ridiculously talented. And like everyone's going to pump up their own team, and especially like in front of press or whatever. But like honestly, we have some of the best people in the industry. They are so passionate about it. And I mentioned this in another conversation I was having today, is that not only are passionate about it, 99% of them are players, and they're highly dedicated players, which means they're passionate about their work, but they're passionate about the game. That's where I think our success is. And that's why I think we can continue to build and we can continue to make this the best thing over time.
Cheating has been running rampant through just about every game that you can name, especially in the mainstream, and especially as of late. And it's also a talking point that's come up quite frequently on the dev side. And we've heard about machine learning and trying to get ahead of the curve. What is that discussion like behind the scenes, where I'm sure day to day you're like, how the heck are they figuring this out with every other game as well? So what does that discussion look like when you're trying to stay ahead of something that people are so strong stuck on trying to figure out themselves? You know, you're always fighting that force of they're trying to outbest you guys.
And that's the thing. It's always this battle of one's trying to outbest the other. But I think the big thing with us investing into this new technology, it gives us that leg up where we're actually able to do things far faster and make them bleed resource at the end of the day. Like Alex mentioned, when we introduced, was it QB into our actual system, a bunch of cheat makers went out of business because they couldn't keep up with it. And that's the point. We're going to make your life a living hell because we don't want you in your game. We want to make a great game, great experience for our players. So just, I'm not going to swear, but just like I get very angry about this. So yeah. What
is your favorite part about Siege that you think separates it from all other games, if not just FPS games?
I mean, one of the flagships that always comes down is our destruction and the fact that no map ever plays out exactly the same. Right. Like you could play Clubhouse a million times and have a million different experiences there, especially because of the ops, because of how people opened up their line of sights, how the actual fragging is going. Like the whole thing is so dynamic that it's something you really can't get anywhere else. And that's the magic of the game. It's an incredible feeling when you are just like dissecting a defender lineup and like what they're doing as an attacker and making your pushes, or where you're just outsmarting people. Like, okay, I get it. I'm older and that's fine, but that's the joy of Siege, is that I can outsmart you. You may be mechanically way more sound than me, and you probably are, but I can outsmart you. And I think that's the thing that makes it such an amazing game, because you can still be engaged in it, like regardless of how that mechanical twitch feel is getting. But yeah.
And so when it comes to talking about a new operator like Deimos, there was also a brief mention to one of his gadgets having inspiration from the military. Can you speak to a bit of that process?
Honestly, the way you worded that question made it feel way more ominous than it is. The game is grounded within a certain time period, and it's important that we stick to that so that we don't get too sci-fi. So that means everything is based on some sort of a reality that you could probably look up and you could probably see. You can see that across the board with all the gadgets, is that whenever they're implemented into the game, they have to have a level of realism and grounded like aspects to it in order for it to kind of fit our universe. Deimos is one of them. Yes, the military tech where they're talking about drones and stuff like that, but even Tubero, our last operator that just came out, the insulation effect on the reinforcements, it's a crazy thing, but the science of it is like, if you actually hyper freeze metal, it loses its conductivity, and it works perfect for us for gameplay. So like, yeah, we're real nerds about it. So if we can get it right down to the T, it's gonna be there.
I was just gonna say you're nerding out over there, but I kind of love when you get into that niche stuff too. Last one for you, and I don't know if this necessarily touches your side of things, but it's just a very unique experience when we talk about Siege and Ubisoft, because you have one of the bigger creators in the entire world with Jinxie, who has influenced a lot of people to play your game. So has that become like a topic of discussion? Has that influenced anything? Has that kind of floated around the office at all, or what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, obviously, we all know about Jinxie. I mean, the guy's got a personality for days, and it's fantastic. And I think at the end of the day, for me, I'll speak personally for me, is that his passion for the game is something that like we adore. Like being able to see someone who just loves the game and is there because they just are obsessed with the actual game. It's incredible to see them have that much success and to be able to be big like that. And like, I wish them all the best to be able to continue to do that, because again, like any one of our fans who cares that much about what we're doing, that empowers us. It feels great to know that people like love what we're doing. It's fantastic to see them succeed.
And also to know that there's thousands upon thousands of creators that aren't as big as Jinxie, but love the game just as much, if not more. So it's just
On that note, of course, there's tons of people who are playing the game regardless of like viewership or anything like that. And at the end of the day, we serve those players just the same. Like, it's like, yeah, it doesn't matter if you're a super huge content creator or even our pros and stuff like that. We have players from every different skill level, every different part of like walks of life. And it's important that we're all welcome into the game. And yeah, we can all celebrate the game together.